Hi, friends. I'm going to be really honest with you right off the bat. This is not the episode I planned to record today. My intention was to start a two-part series on performance anxiety, but when I sat down to start drafting the script, I just wasn't feeling it. And not because performance anxiety isn't important, it is, and we will get there, but because something else is going on in my life right now that I think a lot of you will recognize and have experienced. And I realized that if I'm going to teach you how to use coaching tools in real life, I should probably show you what it looks like when I'm using them in my life. Not from a place of, I figured this out, but from a place of, I'm in it right now. So that's what this episode is. It's messy, it's current, and honestly, recording it is one of the things I almost talked myself out of doing this week. Welcome to Your Passaggi Professor, a podcast for singers who want tools to bridge the gap between the hard skills we learn in music school and the soft skills we need to live focused, intentional lives. I'm your host, Sarah Neely, voice professor, director, and certified life coach. Each week, we'll talk about mindset, emotional regulation, boundaries, and more so you can navigate the passaggi of your life both on and off the stage. So here's what's happening in my world right now. I am going into Tech Week for Sondheim's Into the Woods, which I'm conducting, which, by the way, is not exactly my strongest skill set. So there's tons of fear, and the imposter syndrome is alive and well. Rehearsals are about 20 hours a week, going till 10 p.m. most nights, and I have a long commute on top of that. So I'm getting maybe 1 to 2 hours of awake time at home with my dogs and my partner every day. And as we're heading into Tech, that means I'm going to be there all day, Saturday and Sunday too. And at the same time, I have all my normal teaching, grading things going on. I'm trying to keep this business going, the podcast, the social media, the newsletter. All of it is in this new fledgling stage where consistency matters. And I had been in a really good rhythm of having episodes done 2 weeks in advance. And that is not where we are right now. I am 2 weeks behind. I have also started teaching a new mini-mester class that started just after spring break, which means I'm now spending several extra hours a week responding to students and grading assignments for that class. I am co-writing an academic article with colleagues that's due at the end of this month. I have a big concert coming up in Juarez, Mexico, which is super exciting, but it's also bringing up a lot of old thought patterns about not being good enough and not having the right foundation and struggling to practice with everything that's going on in my life. And, oh yeah, we got a surprise puppy, which is bonkers. We were not prepared for him. We did not plan for him. And quite frankly, we did not want a puppy right now. But then we saw his face, and of course we couldn't say no. He's sweet and beautiful. And then he got really sick, and he had to be at the vet for several days with parvo and other infections. And now he's home, which is great, but we have to isolate him from the other dogs, and we're potty training. And he needs to go out at 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock every morning, like in the middle of the night. So that's the general landscape. I am tired. I am irritable. I am behind on basically everything. And the thing I want to talk about today is not how to fix all of that, because you can't really. But what happens inside your head when everything hits all at once like this is how the tools I teach on this podcast can help you from making a hard season harder than it needs to be. So here's what I've noticed this week. There's the hard stuff, the long rehearsals, the sleep deprivation, the juggling. That's all real. That's the actual difficulty of the season I'm in. But on top of that, my brain has been generating a whole additional layer of suffering that isn't actually required or necessary. And that layer is made up of the thoughts. Thoughts like, I should be further ahead on the podcast. I should be able to handle all of this. I'm not good enough to conduct the show. Sometimes music is so hard. Everyone's going to notice I'm struggling. I should be the one getting up with the puppy If I were better at managing my time, none of this would feel so hard. And none of those thoughts are actually helping me. They're just making me feel worse while I do it. And if you're a singer in a heavy season right now, or a student singer, maybe you're in the middle of a show run, or you're finishing a degree while working and balancing a day-to-day job with audition prep, or even balancing it all with a family and young kids. I bet your brain is doing the same thing. Piling judgment on top of difficulty, adding resistance to an already tough situation. There's the hard thing, and then there's what your brain does with the hard thing. And those are two separate problems. You might not be able to change the hard thing, but you have way more control over the second part than you think. I want to give you a real example from my week, and this is the coaching model I've taught in previous episodes. So, of course, this is developed by Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School. So here's how it showed up for me this week. So there's the circumstance. Our new puppy needs to be taken out at midnight, 2 a.m., 5 a.m. My partner has been handling the majority of that. My thought about that circumstance is that I should be contributing so he doesn't have to do it all himself. And then I feel guilty that I'm not spending time with the puppy. I'm not taking on that responsibility. And that guilt also then leads to shame, that I'm not good enough to handle it, that I am somehow lacking because I need more sleep. And the action that comes from that is I either try to push through and wake up and take the puppy out to prove I'm carrying my weight, which results in me feeling extra exhausted and dysfunctional during the day. And then that circles back around and I start to feel resentful. I feel resentful towards my partner. I feel resentful toward the puppy, even though I'm the one who made the choice to take him out anyway. So that resentment leaks into my relationships, my work, everything, and it's the opposite of what I actually want. Or my thought about that circumstance could be that I let my partner take the burden, but I still wake up constantly and feel guilt, and then I'm not rested, and that whole cycle continues anyway. So that is another option that I have worked through, right? But I caught it. I noticed that I was having these thoughts and that they were leading to those feelings, actions, and results. And so I've worked to change the thought, not to something fake or cheerful, but just to something more intentional. So my new thought is, I am making this choice intentionally for my own health and well-being. I am grateful to my partner for carrying this right now, and I know this isn't forever. There will be times when I can better reciprocate. And that creates the feeling of honestly still a little bit of sadness, a little bit of guilt, but not shame. And that's a really important distinction. Because remember, shame says something's wrong with me. Guilt says, I wish things were different. I made a mistake. But I can work with guilt, whereas shame just shuts me down and leads to resentment. So the action from that new thought is that I am sleeping a little bit more. I am taking better care of myself so that I can better show up during my 12 and 13-hour work days. And the result is that I'm more grounded, I'm more functional, my relationships are protected, which is actually what I want in the first place. So that's the model working in real life. And it's not pretty. The quote-unquote after isn't really a transformation, but it's enough to keep me moving forward instead of spiraling into burnout and extra resentment. So the other thing I want to talk about, can you hear the dogs barking? Hopefully it'll not be too loud when I process this in post. But anyway, the other thing that I want to talk about is what it looks like to keep making progress even when your plan falls apart. So I had a morning this week where I had planned to practice from 9 to 10 a.m. That was my window. And that was the only time I really had to practice. But the puppy wasn't eating his breakfast, and I was worried because he's still recovering from being sick. Then I got a call that my other dog was ready to be picked up from the groomer, and that took longer than expected. And my old thought pattern, the one I'm working to change, would have been to just write off the whole day, to think, well, that didn't happen. Today's a failure. I'm not going to practice at all. But instead, I took 10 minutes before my first lesson of the day to warm myself up. Just 10 minutes. And in the past, I wouldn't have done that because it wouldn't have felt like enough. But a little bit of progress in the right direction is always better than waiting for conditions to be perfect. I didn't just flip the table and walk away because I couldn't practice the full hour, even though I really wanted to. And I actually was able to find a few more small chunks of time throughout my day to get some practice done. And that helped me to feel so much more energy and momentum than I would have felt if I just didn't practice at all. And then I would have started to have all kinds of thoughts about, oh, well, now I'm never going to be ready for my concert. And, all that kind of thing would really spiral. And the same thing happened this week when I needed to record a reel. I really, truly did not want to do it, but I did it anyway. And even though there was resistance in the moment, the relief of getting it done removed so much more weight than the effort of doing it cost me. The worry about not doing it and putting it off and continuing to stay in that resistance was heavier than just doing it. Same thing with this podcast episode. I could have easily stalled out. This isn't what I planned. I'm not as prepared as I'd like to be. I could have come up with a dozen excuses, but I'm here, I'm recording, and that matters. Now here's the thing I'm having to remind myself. When you're inside a hard season, it feels permanent. It feels like every little thing that goes wrong, even knocking over my water bottle and having to clean up a bunch of water, the puppy having an accident on the floor. I sent out a newsletter this week with a silly mistake. If you know, you know. All of those start to feel enormous. It's like your emotional reserves are so low that things that would normally roll right off your back suddenly feel catastrophic. And by the way, the newsletter mistake, I accidentally sent it out with a duplicate greeting because I had written one in my draft and my email template that I use already had one built in. Which is a rookie mistake. And my brain immediately went to, everyone's going to think I'm terrible. They're going to think I don't know how to write my own content. They're going to think I'm just copy pasting from AI. And that spiral was so fast and so loud over a simple formatting error. But when I zoomed out, when I actually look at the calendar, I can recognize that this intense period is really only about 3 more weeks. The show will close, Tech Week will end, the puppy will be older and sleeping through the night, the article will be submitted, and things will be much more manageable. And I'm not saying just think positive and it'll be fine. I'm saying that reminding yourself that a hard season is a season, that it has an end, can be the difference between enduring it and collapsing under it. And in the meantime, you take it one day at a time, one task at a time, one tiny practice session at a time, and you ask yourself, what is the most important thing that needs to get done today? And then you let the other things go without beating yourself up over it. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. Coaching tools and mindset work don't make hard seasons easy. They make hard seasons manageable in a healthier way. I'm still tired. I'm still behind. The puppy still needs to go out at 2 a.m. Nothing I've taught you on this podcast makes the hard things disappear. What it does is keep you from piling unnecessary suffering on top of the real difficulty. It helps you make intentional choices instead of reactive ones. It helps you take the 10-minute warm-up instead of writing the whole day off. It helps you record the reel, record the podcast, show up. Imperfectly, behind schedule, running on not enough sleep. You keep going. And you don't have to be perfect to make progress. You just have to keep choosing to move forward, even in small ways, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you this week, straight from the mess. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me be real with you. And if this kind of episode where I'm teaching from inside the experience instead of looking back on it is something that you find valuable, I would really love to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram or leave a comment. I genuinely want to know. And I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to Your Passaggi Professor with Sarah Neely. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen. This really helps the podcast reach more singers just like you. And if you're ready to learn the life skills that smooth the passaggi of your life, you can follow me on Instagram at your_passaggi_professor. That's Passaggi with 2 S's and 2 G's. There's a link in my bio where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter and learn more about working with me. See you next time.